Dealing with anxiety. Sophia gave a great example of how dynamic tension works, or can work, said Ted. There's another aspect of dynamic tension, though. Being aware of it will allow you to consciously and effectively draw on dynamic tension to create your desired outcomes. Remember what we said a few minutes ago about how the creator orientation is not all sweetness and light? Right, I said. It also takes a lot of hard work. Ted nodded. It's important to remember that anxiety and even fear are part of the human experience, and that these unpleasant emotional states very often raise their heads when we begin working creatively with dynamic tension. It helps to be aware that anxiety is part of the experience of manifesting. Anxiety has positive aspects, such as excitement and exhilaration, but it can also arise in ways that limit your effectiveness. In other words, you can have your anxiety, but don't let your anxiety have you. It took me a while to really understand the distinction between my own feelings of anxiety and the sense of dynamic tension, the creative force and the creator orientation, Sophia added. I have a friend who really helped me understand the difference. He used to teach skydiving in the Air Force. One evening, I was sharing the principle of dynamic tension with him, and he pointed out that the exhilaration he felt jumping out of a plane was certainly not the same thing as gravity, the force that pulled him toward the earth as he fell. The force of gravity, he told me, contributed to his feeling of exhilaration, but exhilaration and gravity are not the same. Likewise, the force of dynamic tension is not the same as the feeling of anxiety that often comes up when we tap into it. I pondered that for a moment. I understood the distinction, but it wasn't clear to me why it was so important. Living and working in the creator orientation is a conscious process. Anxiety is like a mischievous monkey chattering its way into your thoughts. If you don't stay aware of its antics, it can quite easily propel you into the victim orientation, Ted said. How? I asked. Do you remember the inner state of the victim orientation that I drew in the sand yesterday? It was anxiety, I recalled. Yes, said Ted, and if you allow anxiety to pull you into reacting, you'll limit the effectiveness that dynamic tension offers you as you attempt to create an outcome. So, David, create the tension between your two hands with the band again. Now, if you confuse anxiety with the tension between your vision, your right hand, and your current reality, your left hand, you'll tend to react in order to release the tension, hoping it will get rid of the anxiety. Doing this may make you feel better, but it will not help you create the results you want. So what is one thing you could do right now to release the tension? I looked at my hands. Probably the easiest thing to do would be to let go of my vision. I moved my right hand toward my left. Absolutely. The easiest thing would be to compromise your vision. You could let go of or reduce your vision. You might convince yourself that what you want to create is unrealistic or impossible, or that you're not worthy of such a lofty dream. Then you would settle for something less than your heart's true desires. The reality, though, is that you can't invest your soul in a compromise. Seeing my wrinkled brow, Sophia added, Let me give you an example. About a year ago, I decided to change jobs, to move into a profession in which I could use Ted's principles in my work. I was working as a manager in the loan processing department of a bank, and I had really come to dread going to work, not to mention dealing with my difficult loss. I longed for a more fulfilling job, but couldn't afford to leave without having a new job to take its place. So I took the first offer that came along. I went to work as a trainer for another company. I thought that compromise was as close as I was going to be able to get to what I really wanted. It ended up being the wrong move. Now I realize that I settled for something much less than my envisioned outcome. So what did you do? I asked. Well, I'm still working on resolving it. I'm still in that job and giving it my best effort. At the same time, I'm working with a coach to clarify my vision of what I want my work to be. I'm giving myself the time to get really clear before I make any more changes. Ted nodded. So you could compromise your vision to resolve the tension and get rid of the anxiety you might feel. It's the easiest, most immediate, and most common reaction. The other way is actually much more subtle. It has to do with how you assess your current reality. It's all too easy not to tell the truth about your current reality, to deny, minimize, or rationalize it away. There are many ways to shade the truth or put a certain spin on the current situation by telling yourself it's not as bad or as good as it seems. Sophia chuckled softly. My current job is actually the result of both those ways of reacting. Not only did I settle for something less than I wanted, but when I was interviewed for the training position, I told myself I could probably create a coaching program once I got into the organization. I even dismissed the recruiter's comment that they considered coaching to be a function of the employee relations department rather than the training group. One of the keys to tapping the power of dynamic tension is to tell yourself the truth about your current reality, said Ted. This is often the most challenging aspect of the process of manifesting an outcome, because people tend to see reality as either rosier or gloomier than it actually is. Telling the truth in this sense means being objective and detached enough to see reality as it is without labeling it as either good or bad. It's not as easy as it sounds, Sophia added. I have a quote on my bulletin board at work to remind me of this principle. I look at it every day. The friend who gave it to me said it was from a former corporate executive. It says, "What determines your destiny is not the hand you are dealt, but how you play the hand. And the way to play the hand is to see reality for what it is and to act accordingly." That is the challenge, to see reality for what it is. Ted said, paying attention to what is true at every point along the way while you continue to hold your vision lets you make realistic decisions about which baby steps you will take to move yourself closer to your goal. As you move forward, you may resolve the tension by changing your situation, by modifying your vision as you get clearer about its final form, or by finding an entirely new path that will lead to your destination. At the same time, David, it's important to be realistic about what forward progress looks like. The way of creating is not a smooth and continuous upward curve of achievement. Some of the steps you take may end up being detours or out-and-out mistakes. By staying focused on your vision, though, you'll find even those steps useful in the creating process. There is no such thing as a wasted baby step. Every step will either take you closer to or further away from what you intend to create, and that process will give you priceless information to spur you onward. If you continue applying these principles, I guarantee that you will achieve remarkable and often unpredictable results throughout your life. Ted is right. The creator way of being can be quite magical, Sophia mused. Baby steps help us move in time from our current reality toward a vision. Many times a baby step is just that, an incremental act that serves your vision. But there are other times. Her voice trailed off and I noticed her eyes were moist. Other times, she continued, the most amazing thing happens. I call them the twin sisters, synchronicity and serendipity. It's when unpredictable, spontaneously helpful events appear to just happen. Something I need shows up right when I need it. I open a magazine or a book to just the right page that answers a burning question or that inspires me to take a more effective approach. Or the right person comes into my life at just the right time. An involuntary shiver of affirmation coursed up my spine. I looked down at the creator orientation Ted had drawn in my journal. I looked at the expanse of the sea, the blue waves rolling out far beyond my line of vision. I turned to Ted and Sophia, and they both smiled. You mean like these last 2 days? I said. Sophia nodded. It's no accident that you've come to this place and this conversation at this time in your life. Your choice to contemplate, to step into a new life stance and a new way of being opened the door for Ted and me to meet you. Whether or not we continue to work together after today, I'm confident that we'll always be friends on the path." "Yes, friends on the path," smiled Ted. "And David, as you live your life from the creator orientation, you'll discover that your new relationships take on a much different quality than you experienced in the victim orientation. You now have the potential to leave the dreaded drama triangle behind. In all your relationships, professional and personal, you can now step into a new framework, the empowerment dynamic.